There's a really strong chance that Auburn's next quarterback entered the portal this weekend.
Freezing temperatures are likely for several hours inland and a few hours closer to the coast.
Yes.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Joining me as he does every single Monday, Lindsay, Crosby, writer at auburndaily.com, as well as host of Locked On MLB Prospects. Lindsay, since this feed was last, what am I trying to say here? Since the last time we put up a show, two key quarterbacks have entered the portal. Casey Thompson on Friday, and then yesterday, news breaking that Michigan State quarterback Payton Thorne has also entered the portal. Also yesterday, Casey Thompson, the former Nebraska quarterback, was in Auburn meeting with Hugh Freeze. Sounds like he was throwing with Hugh Freeze. Also sounds like the training staff is taking a very close look at his shoulder. But this only confirms that Auburn does want a quarterback. There's a lot of people that were saying, no, let's roll with the guys that we've got. I do not think that is the goal of this staff at all, and I think this past weekend confirms that. But both of these guys seem very interested in Auburn, Lindsay, and both of these guys make Auburn better in 2023.
I think the big thing is, yes, the coaching staff obviously wants somebody new, but the players are wanting somebody. I kind of was going and looking, and you can see like the wide receiver room tweeting at the quarterbacks, Casey Thompson in particular, about like, you need to come to Auburn. And it's like, honestly, it's one of those things where I understand the fans think Robby Ashford's fun to watch. They enjoyed that one pass in A-Day or that one pass in the Iron Bowl. And it's fun to think about what if he was that guy all the time. But the people who see him the most, the other players that he's going to be throwing to, the coaches who are trying to get the best talent possible, all of them are trying to get somebody else here. And so whether it's Nebraska's Casey Thorne or it's Michigan State's Payton Thorne,
Casey Thompson. Casey Thompson
or Payton Thorne. Yep. It's going to be somebody with a T name throwing passes over Robby Ashford or Holden Geriner.
You'd have to think, unless they just get on campus and cannot grasp the offense for whatever reason, but that hasn't really been the case with Hugh Freeze quarterbacks in the past or these guys throughout their career. Both would have 1 year left of eligibility were they to come here. So, I think that's something, and maybe that kind of opens the door for Robby down the road. We'll certainly have to wait and see. But these guys are different style quarterbacks, which is a little curious and a little fun to discuss as we're about to. So Casey Thompson, more of a dual threat. He's nowhere near, Robby levels of athleticism, but not afraid to, take the ball and run it for an extra 5, 6, 7 yards, maybe extend the play, outside of the pocket behind the line of scrimmage and find somebody. You love that. That's exciting at any level of football. You love that. Payton Thorne, however, he can run a little bit, but nowhere near as athletic as some of these other guys that are currently on the roster. But he's a leader. He's led Michigan State offenses to be successful. And in fact, I think the numbers that he had in like last year's situation with Michigan State that wasn't very good is actually pretty respectable as well. But they're both guys, and I think Payton Thorne feels a little bit more like what Hugh Freeze wants right now. If I'm just being honest with you, it's just a gut feeling. I think it's going to be Payton Thorne unless something really, really shifts from the Auburn point of view on all of this. Maybe Casey Thompson blew him away yesterday. I don't know. But regardless, I think Auburn's going to get one of these guys. And I think, I think you look at, Payton Thorne, and Cole Pinkson actually wrote about this too. Probably similar type offense to like what Bo Wallace was at Ole Miss, which I would take that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, they put guys in the NFL with that offense. And so it's something where right now, I don't necessarily think they're as concerned with what this guy, as far as skill wise, is he a runner? Is he a passer? Is he both? More so of, we want a guy who is experienced, who can make the plays you should make. Because I think the thing that we've noticed, whether it was during the season with Robby Ashford or whether it was in the spring, either in the viewing periods at practice or at A-Day, is that all the quarterbacks we have on campus, all three, including TJ Finley, are not as consistent as we want them to be.
Right.
And sometimes, like you saw the pass I've mentioned in the A-Day game, sometimes they make the difficult plays, but too often they're not making the easy ones. And that's what really holds your offense back when you get to SEC play and you're facing good defenses is you may not get it. Like, you have to hit the wide open pass because that guy may not get wide open again. You have to hit the back on a screen pass. And if your guys in the room can't do that for whatever reason, you have to go out and get somebody better. And it doesn't necessarily matter what additional elements they bring to the game because you have to execute the basic stuff first. And it feels like these guys have a much better chance of doing that than what's currently in the room.
So curious to see what the timeline for everything is. I mean, Casey Thompson entered the portal, then he was at Auburn very quickly after, at least had plans to get to Auburn.
It's all those
very quickly after. Right. And then, Payton Thorne enters the portal yesterday on Sunday. When will he get to Auburn? Will he need to take any visits? Curious to see what exactly that looks like. From the Michigan State side of it, they're very upset with the guys that are leaving their program right now, which is always a good sign, right? It's always a good sign when you get somebody or at least have a shot at getting somebody and the previous school is upset that they no longer have them. So that's a good thing. And, they got to watch Payton Thorne for 2 seasons. And that's something where it's like, if you watch a guy for 2 seasons and you still want him around, that's obviously something that you want a piece of. So we'll certainly see what the timeline is for that. I can't imagine either of these guys want to dilly-dally. I mean, if you're a starting quarterback, you want to be there for the summer, especially if you're coming in. You want to be enrolled and be a part of as many summer workouts and get to know the receivers and your offensive line and your tight ends and your running backs and get the playbook in your hand as quick as you possibly can. I know you can't really interact with coaches, but you can interact with your team and some of the, the leaders on this team can kind of go show them the ropes and things like that. And both of these guys, they're experienced dudes. I just got a feeling this is going to happen pretty quickly, Lindsay. I think it's going to be one of these 2 guys. I would predict by Wednesday.
Yeah, they're both grad transfers. So it's something where, they, as soon as their classes are done, they can be here. From what I understand, Thompson actually already has his master's degree at Nebraska. And so he's done. He's probably taking a class just to keep eligibility right now, but essentially he's done.
I feel like he's been in college football for forever. So yes, that makes sense.
This will be his 6th year upcoming this fall. Started off at Texas, but no, just something where we're going to know by the midpoint of this week who is the quarterback. So. Yeah.
I think so.
And I'm very excited, one, because I kind of feel bad for the guys in the room that everybody's tweeting at other quarterbacks to please come here. But then 2, maybe once we have an idea of that quarterback, then you can start looking at, is there going to be somebody like a receiver come with them? I do have to, I don't think he's going to come, but when Payton Thorne entered the portal, his top receiver, Keon Coleman, also entered the portal. Yeah. So I do think getting that quarterback, it's kind of like a recruiting class. Getting that quarterback helps cement the rest of the class around it. I think it's going to be similar here. Can you get a quarterback so that you can start getting other transfers around them, including the wide receiver?
It would be wild. It would be certainly a wild series of events. I do think Auburn will add a wide receiver through the transfer portal soon. Let's talk about that in just a second, Lindsay, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Lindsay, you're the money guy. Does that sound like free money to you? Yes or no?
That is free money.
Yep. Is there anything that could possibly go wrong in this scenario?
Absolutely nothing.
That's it. So head over to FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That is FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. Lindsay, several big name guys joined Casey Thompson on Auburn's campus this weekend. Let's start with the receiver since I teed that one up. Former Ohio State wide receiver Caleb Burton was in Auburn this weekend. Sounds like he had a good time. And what does this mean moving forward? It's kind of interesting because he hasn't played any, but he's a former 4-star. 4-stars from Texas are usually pretty highly coveted guys. And, he's smaller, but he was recruited as an inside and an outside guy when he was coming out of the high school ranks. He's 5'11", 169 is what Ohio State listed him at last year. Not a big dude. But we've seen in this modern age of football, if you can run routes, it does not matter how big you are. So we'll see if he can do that.
The other part of that too, and you touched on it briefly, but he spent a year at Ohio State. So he's already transferred, or this will be his first transfer, meaning he won't be able to transfer again until he graduates. It's a thing that you have to think about, that aspect of this when you're looking at the transfer portal and you're dealing with this new world of roster construction. Is guys get one free transfer, but once they've transferred, they can't transfer again unless they either sit out a year or they graduate. So it's a scenario where if you bring him in, you have him for multiple seasons, barring some sort of injury or him choosing to sit out. So you get a year of a guy who's been in a very, very high quality college weight room, in a strength and nutrition program. He's been around very good coaches. Anybody Brian Hartline's recruited is a guy that I want on my roster. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of upside here. You don't have film of what he's done against college defenses to know what he's capable of other than his practice film, which they have and we don't. But you have to like the idea of, he was recruited by Ohio State, by Brian Hartline. He has to be good. And let's get him on campus, give him an opportunity to earn a job.
Yep. All right. As we're recording this, Coach Ron Roberts, of course, Auburn's defensive coordinator, tweeted out, the recruit that they got to recruit. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about the Jack linebackers that were on campus, because I will do a full show dedicated to one of them when we get that news. But for what it's worth, App State outside linebacker Jalen McLeod sounds like he had a good visit in Auburn this weekend. May talk more about him this week if that ends up who it is. The other big name, literally, it's a massive name, Montana Lamonius Craig. It seems like there's interest in Auburn. Sounds like he was on campus this weekend as well. And so, once again, if Auburn can get either of these quarterbacks that we already talked about and these two wide receivers, all of a sudden, Lindsay, this offense looks totally different.
Yeah. And so, Lemonade Kool-Aid here, coming from Colorado. So a program that didn't have a ton of success last year, but it's just one of those thousands of players that are leaving that Colorado program. But someone who has spent 3 years in college, and so is one of the more experienced options, is also a little bit bigger, 6'2" as far as height. He's not as thick as you'd expect, 185, but he spent 3 years in college.
His name is thicker than he is.
Yes. There are more C's in his name than there are in his weight. But 3 straight years. Last year he played, looks like about 470 snaps, and 2/3 of them are out wide, 1/3 in the slot. So it feels like a guy that has some experience doing whatever you need him to do in this offense. But with the height, you'd expect him to kind of be an outside receiver. Either way, you have to feel good about the idea of, let's bring him in. He does wear number 1. Not sure how that's going to work, but if you can beat TJ Finley, you can have the number. And I mean, that's got to be a selling point, right?
Yeah. Give him the number, please.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But very excited to see if we can get these two receivers onto campus and then get them to commit.
So our receivers, if he were to come here, I think he'd be an outside guy. Mm-hmm. The receivers numbers would be 1, 4, because Camden Brown, and 6 because of VAR. Single digits, baby. Let's rock and roll.
It's, listen, wearing number 1 makes you faster. That is science. That is not me saying that. I am not speculating. That is science. It's been proven.
I mean, I've never seen a slow person wearing number 1.
TJ Finley.
That doesn't count though.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've never seen a
quarterbacks
skill
don't
position
count.
Player. Yeah.
Quarterbacks don't count.
I still think there should be a rule that the fastest player on your offense gets to wear number 1. That should just be a thing. Call it the Percy Harvin rule.
I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. All right. So Auburn had some guys enter the portal over this weekend. I don't think any of them are a big deal, despite what social media may tell you. I'll address this in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Want to encourage you to join the Locked On Auburn Discord. It is free. All you have to do is click the link in the episode description down below. Lindsay, I think the biggest name that has entered the portal is Dillon Brooks, the former outside linebacker. ESPN had him as one of the top players in his recruiting class, but just could never really gain weight and never really crack the rotation unless like two guys in front of you got hurt. I mean, that's just really kind of what it was. And you heard nothing. You heard nothing about him in spring. Nothing. Even talking with guys like his teammates. It just, he never really came up. So I called this like 3 months ago, and a lot of y'all told me I was dumb. So I'm not going to I'm not going to really drive this home. The everydayers know. The everydayers know that I've been talking about this for months. But I don't think Dillon Brooks leaving has any impact on this roster whatsoever.
I have a request, Zach.
Okay.
Will you please victory lap this for me?
I'm not going to.
Because you and I talked on this show on a Monday before spring practice about how there was a lot of conversation about Keldrick Falk within the program and his potential, what he could do in spring. People very excited to watch him. There was a lot of talk about Elijah McAllister, getting him here and what a big deal that was. There was a lot of talk about, do you need to go get more jacks out of the portal? And the talk you didn't hear was Dillon Brooks.
Yeah.
And then after A-Day, a lot of the conversation was Auburn's going to go out and get more Jackson in the portal. And we're excited about how these two guys look, Keldrick Falk and Elijah McAllister. And the guy we didn't talk about was Dillon Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if you can't crack the two deep at this position,
right,
you're not going to do it.
No.
And, I mean, He did not see the field at all in his first year. Mm-hmm. He appeared in 9 games in 2022. I have not looked, but I would guess under 100 snaps. Probably under 50 snaps. But 6 tackles, a tackle for loss, 1 sack, a fumble recovery. I think the only thing is surprising about this is that some people are more up in arms about this than they are up in arms about Landen King.
So here's why. If I had to rank them, I would rather have Landen King on the roster than Dillon Brooks.
Is it because Landen King has actually done something at Auburn?
Well, I think Landen King's thing is so he came to campus as a tight end.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really the only position group that I think we felt good about during the Brian Harsin era. And this offense, whether it's the coaching staff or the scheme or whatever, like they loved John Samuel Schenker. They loved him, right? We loved him here on the show. He was a Locked On Auburn athlete, and congrats to him for getting picked up by the Raiders. So my understanding of what happened was the staff went to him and said, "Hey, we're good at tight end, but you're electric and you're big. Can you lose weight and play wide receiver?" And he's like, "Yeah, that's cool. I can do whatever, coach." And then he just never had the speed to play wide receiver.
Yeah,
looks like you're about to say something. Yeah.
My theory on this is whenever you see a tight end that is tall, 6'5", Landen King 6'5", but they don't have that prototypical tight end size. In his case, he's listed out of high school at 220. To me, when you see a guy who has the height but not the weight of a tight end, to me, he's too slow to play wide receiver. That's why he's listed at tight end. That's why he was used at tight end. And that's not universally the case. There's a lot of guys who develop more in college and put on that weight and do the job. But to me, that's what it felt like when he first got here. And You said they were fine with the room. They thought the room was good. They had a lot of options, and the only one they used was John Samuel Schenker. So they asked him to move to wide receiver and then didn't use him.
No.
And it feels like a better coaching staff could have found a way to get him into the game more and to give him more of an opportunity to make an impact.
I'm there with you. I'm there with you. Colby Smith also entered the portal this weekend. He was a reserve offensive lineman, was the best offensive lineman recruit of the Harsin era, probably. And he, I guess he's hitting the portal. So don't think that really impacts us. May impact us like from depth perspective, like moving forward, but I don't think Hugh Freeze really liked many of the offensive linemen when he took over. And I think this is just kind of part of flipping the roster. So good luck to all of these guys. I saw Landen King tweet out that Colorado offered. So, maybe that could be a fun thing if he can go play for Dion. But outside of that, best of luck to all of these guys. I'm curious to see what their next schools are. If it's kind of a lateral thing, out of the conference or what. I'm really interested to see who calls these guys.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting if we get a transfer from Colorado and we send one to Colorado. Because last time we made this team-to-team trade, it was with Oregon. And in some ways, we think we won the trade. In some ways, we did not win the trade.
I don't think I don't know. DJ's pretty good.
DJ and Jason Jones.
Oh, yeah, Jason Jones. Who, comes on the show all the time. Yeah.
Or Bo Nix. I mean, it's we need a quarterback still. We never figured out that problem after Bo Nix left.
Right.
But we got two players that are very good and fit well into this program. And we know at least one of them, if not both, are going to get drafted and go and be pros. We also kind of did a trade with Cincinnati. It was just delayed. Nick Mardner for Tarvaris Dawson. Right. I think I feel like that one might be a wash. I don't know who's going to win that one, but either way, it's definitely something where
curious to see.
Yeah. Curious to see what happens there.
It's going to be a crazy week. It sounds like it was one of the Jack guys. So I'll do a full show on that whenever that becomes official. So there's a chance I did it last night. So go ahead and check the feed to see. Lindsay, how can people check out everything you've got going on right now?
I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. That's the hub for everything, whether it's minor league baseball, Locked On MLB prospects, whether it is Auburn baseball, auburndaily.com, whether it is the Atlanta Braves, bravestoday.com. Find me there.
Yep. You can follow me on socials at Z Blackerby. Read all my written work at auburndaily.com. And we'll see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.